Welcome to this week's edition of Outdoors Online, a weekly webcast produced by the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. I'm your host, Mike Anderson. My guest this week is Wildlife Resource Section Leader, Kent Luttschwager. Today we're going to talk about wildlife management areas. Kent, we have a lot going on right now on our WMAs. How many WMAs do we have and how many acres?
Yeah, we have 226 wildlife management areas scattered across the state. About 220,000 acres of wildlife management areas, range from a couple acres to 33,000 acres in one chunk. So they're all different sizes and shapes and goals and objectives for our properties.
Sure, we manage all those, but we don't necessarily own all those.
That's correct. We have some partnerships where we manage some Corps of Engineers property along Corps of Engineers that we have under a lease agreement or a license agreement from the Corps, and they're leased to the Game and Fish Department to be managed specifically for fish and wildlife management purposes. We also have some other entities, including the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Bureau of Reclamation, DOT, and so we have agreements with those to manage some of those properties, or we own them in fee title.
Okay, what is the primary purpose for wildlife management areas?
The primary purpose for our WMAs is wildlife production and hunting opportunities. Those are the two big things that we're using sportsmen's dollars to manage these properties and to provide wildlife habitat for production, recruitment of animals, and then also to provide fall hunting opportunities, or spring, I guess, in the case of turkeys, but fall hunting opportunities for hunters, for sportsmen.
Kent, go into some of your guys' management techniques on these WMAs.
Okay. Yeah, each parcel or each wildlife management area kind of really has its own unique goals and objectives depending on its topography, if it's got wetlands on it or adjacent to a lake, if our goal is native prairie. So we're using numerous different management techniques that we employ over the course of the year. Everything from prescribed burning. We're using prescribed burning that we're doing with our staff or sometimes with a contractor. The idea there is for sometimes we're trying to fight invasive encroachment of species that are undesirable as far as wildlife production is concerned, primarily cool season grasses and sometimes brush, and those kinds of, it depends on the area. And so we're using controlled burning. We do a lot of grazing with adjacent cooperators where we're providing areas for them to graze, and we're using as good a grazing science as we can to keep those cows on the short term, rotations, that kind of stuff. Our staff spends a fair amount of time planning wildlife food plots. We've got some really good wildlife food plots with the idea that they provide some great hunting opportunities, but they also overwinter a lot of critters, and that also somewhat minimizes the adjacent damage sometimes, that if you can have a lot of deer winter on our wildlife management area versus a neighbor's haystacks, that's a good thing. We're planting a lot of trees and shrubs. We've got wetland projects where we're either pumping, using water control structures. There's just a long list of different management techniques that we're using on our wildlife management areas to keep them as productive as we can.
A lot of activity going on our wildlife management areas right now.
Well, the hunting seasons are open now, so a lot of seasons started cracking open September 1st with the archery seasons and the dove seasons and stuff like that. Then here comes the pheasant or the sharptail season, and the duck seasons are open now, and the waterfowl seasons, and so we're rolling, rolling into. And that's kind of our staff's thing, is we try to get a lot of our activities done the spring, summer, early fall, so then when it's time for guys to be out hunting, that we're not out there with equipment and causing interference with those hunting and recreational opportunities that we have.
Sure, and some of those WMAs have boat ramp access and fishing.
We kind of have two groups of wildlife management areas, one where it's really specific for wildlife and wildlife production and hunting opportunities. We also have a small group of wildlife management areas that are based around smaller lake bodies, where sometimes we have a managing cooperative entity, such as a water board or a park district, where we have boat ramps, vault toilets, that kind of stuff, and they're kind of the weekly or daily operators of those higher use recreational facilities. So, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's an enjoyable time right now to somewhat enjoy the fruits of our labor. We put a lot of time and effort into our WMAs, have a lot of pride in them, and provide a lot of opportunities.
Deer season's less than a month away. We have shooting ranges on our WMAs also.
Yeah, we have a handful of shooting ranges that get a lot of use. More and more recreational shooting. You know, they used to be primarily for guys to zero in, target in, get ready for the upcoming seasons, whether it was you had an elk tag or a moose tag or an antelope tag or deer tag. But now we're seeing year-round shooting activities on our shooting ranges, and extensive amount of use.
Okay, one thing we want to emphasize is these WMAs, they're for everybody. So when you're out using these WMAs, respect other people that are also out.
Absolutely. You know, our wildlife management areas the management is paid for by sportsmen, and it's to produce wildlife and provide those hunting opportunities. And sometimes we get into a lot of other requests for public use, public land use, and sometimes that gets to be sometimes problematic. So we try to limit some of those activities, the parties and all those kinds of things that come with a lot of litter, a lot of garbage, a lot of just problems that we just really don't need or are geared up or staffed up to deal with. So it's public land, but it's not public land to abuse, it's public land to use.
Let's go into some rules and regulations. For example, if you're going to put a tree stand or a trail camera or something, what do you need to do?
That changed a couple years ago. We were having some of these personal items that were left out on our wildlife management areas, and it was just getting to be kind of an issue. So a couple years ago, we started a identification system. So if you're going to leave personal property, such as a tree stand, a ground blind, game cameras, you need a identification number that's issued by the department. It should be yours for the rest of your life, so you'll be issued that one number, which can also be used on your fish house, so you don't have to display your name or your phone number on that. You can have that identification number. So that's a one-time issued by the department, and it's yours for the rest of your lifespan, I guess. And it needs to be on those tree stands, on those ground blinds, on those game cameras, if they're to be left unattended on wildlife management areas.
And we have a full list of all of our wildlife management areas on our website,
Yep.
gf.nd.gov.
Yep, on the website.
A lot of great information, Ken. Thank
There you
you.
go.
Like Kent just mentioned, for a list of all the wildlife management areas and the rules and regulations, go to the Game and Fish website at gf.nd.gov. For Kent Luttschwager and the rest of the staff here at the Game and Fish Department, thanks for joining us for this week's Outdoors Online. We'll see you again next week.